Hello, so today we're going to be making a 3-layered cake with chocolate, vanilla, and red velvet cake, with also a cream cheese icing. First, we're going to make the vanilla cake. We need 375 mils of unbleached all-purpose flour. We're going to sift that flour to prevent any clumps. Next, we're going to sift in 7.5 mils of baking powder. We're also going to add a little over a milliliter of salt. Next, we're going to crack an egg using the flat table technique. Also adding 250 mils of sugar, 150 milliliters of milk, as well as 7.5 milliliters of vanilla extract. Now adding 90 mils of canola oil. And now we're going to add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients, adding the dry ingredients in increments so that it prevents clumping. Oh, so silky. Now we're adding the batter to a parchment and butter lined pan. Preparation for baking. Baking at 350 degrees for about 50 minutes. Now it's time to make the red velvet cake. We're going to start by leveling and adding 400 mils of all-purpose flour. Next, adding a little over 15 mils of cocoa powder, as well as adding 7.5 mils of baking soda. Now we're adding 2 eggs using the table cracking method, and 155 milliliters of buttermilk. Also adding 7.5 milliliters of vanilla. Mix, mix, mix. Now adding 40 milliliters of vegetable oil into the wet ingredients. Time to well incorporate all the ingredients. Now we're adding 5 mils of vinegar. Adding our 90 mils of softened butter. Again incorporating all of the ingredients seamlessly. Now we're adding 25 milliliters of red food coloring to our wet ingredients. Honestly, it looks like blood at this point. Now we're slowly going to add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients to prevent clumping. Now we're going to add the red velvet batter into a parchment-lined pan. Now baking at 350 degrees for 26 to 30 minutes. Now we're going to be making the chocolate cake. Now we're going to be adding 200 mils of all-purpose flour, as well as 250 mils of granulated sugar, 85 mils of cocoa powder, 3.5 mils of baking soda, 3.5 mils of baking powder, and adding those to the dry ingredients. Now adding 2.5 milliliters of salt. Now incorporate all of the dry ingredients together. For wet ingredients, we're going to be adding 1 egg using the flat table technique. Adding 75 mils of vegetable oil, 125 mils of milk, and 5 mils of vanilla. Mix all of the wet ingredients together. Now we're slowly going to add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients to prevent clumping. Now we're going to be adding 125 milliliters of hot water to our batter. Like the other cakes, now we're going to add the batter into a parchment-lined pan and baking at 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. Now we're adding 240 mils of cream cheese, 125 mils of unsalted butter, 5 mils of vanilla, and now creaming all of the ingredients together with a wooden spoon. And finally, for the icing, we're going to be adding 500 mils of icing sugar. Now Ava will be extracting the icing from the Oreos. Now using a wooden spoon to crush up the Oreos. Now Ava is going to be slicing up the cookie into small bits. Now that the vanilla cake is cool and out of the oven, I'm going to be slicing the top layer of the vanilla cake to make it flat for the other cakes to go on top. Now smearing the cream cheese icing over the top of the vanilla cake. Sprinkling some Oreo crumble on top as well. And leveling it around with a spoon. Now we're going to be putting the red velvet cake on top of the vanilla cake. We're also going to be smearing some of the cream cheese icing over it, as well as adding some cookie crumble on top. Now adding the chocolate cake on top and smearing cream cheese icing over it, with a crumble on top. Now I'm slicing the sides of the cake to make it parallel to each other. That is how we made our 3-layer cake.